Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Cats Whiskers TV podcast. My name is Jono Bullard. We've got a very busy show coming up with quite a few guests on as well. But first of all, as ever, we'll be looking back at Saturday's defeat against Cardiff from straight after the game in the Bunkers Hill with myself, Adam, Aaron and Paul. We'll be reviewing the Giants against Panthers game on Sunday with Neil the Coach Russell as our guest, and we'll also be looking at some of the other Elite League results as well. I'll also be joined by Aaron Murphy, who will be talking about the Elite League coverage on Premier Sports from a question we received last week on AskCWTV from Clantastic, so he'll be covering off all the points made in that. And then finally we'll be having our weekend preview. Craig Anderson from Slapshot Scotland joins us to take a look at Fife against Panthers, and then the following night Panthers against Dundee. We were going to have AskCWTV this week, but we asked a question on a topic about whether you thought that Panthers' criticism was justified. The team at the moment, the response has been so overwhelming on Twitter and on the cage that we've decided to actually do that as a separate podcast later in the week, so look out for that. Your sponsors will be included in that show. But first, it's back to Saturday night in the Bunkers Hill Inn. After a few weeks of upbeat post-game analysis in the Bunkers Hill Inn, I don't think it's going to be so upbeat tonight after a 3-2 penalty shots defeat for the Nottingham Panthers against the Cardiff Devils. As ever, I'm with Mr. Aaron Lord.
Good evening, Jonathan.
Mr. Paul Barn.
Hello.
And Mr. Adam Redditch.
Hello.
So, gents, is there really too much we can talk about that game? Because after the last couple of weeks we've had some real barnstormers, that was far from a classic.
No, it wasn't great, was it? I mean, for me, there's two things that I would just like to say. That I think the Cardiff Devils you have to give credit to, because they came in here, they fought for every puck, they fought for every face-off. I think they really did want redemption for the win that we got in the BBT the other week. So I think you have to say fair play to them. And from a Panthers point of view, for me, just too many players didn't turn up tonight. Players that have performed in previous games and won us games just weren't on the radar tonight. And the problem is when you have numerous players, which I think there was tonight, not play well, then you are always going to struggle to win a game.
Adam, are there any positives that the Panthers can take from that game tonight?
We managed to get a point because there are times tonight, the way we defended, where I thought that getting a point was a long way away. I know that we spent a lot of the game up in terms of the scoreboard, but we were just making so many routine errors, in defence on our blue line, and I thought that was going to cost us in regulation time, but somehow we managed to get to overtime and we got ourselves a point. So I suppose if I'm trying to be ultra optimistic, we got something out of the game, but it was just disappointing really, because it was a bit after the Lord Mayor's show, after some of the performances that we've seen from Panthers in the last couple of weeks. It just felt really flat tonight. I thought that we started the game well. The first period was good. We had a bit of jump, but then after the first period, it all went downhill, and I think that we got weaker and Cardiff seemed to get stronger as the game progressed. But it was a really gritty game. I don't think there's much quality on display from either side, but I can't really complain about the outcome.
Paul, obviously Nathan Robinson left the team. Do you think we were missing his creativity a bit tonight?
I think we were, but I think one of the positives you can take from the game was the Chris Higgins looked more like his old self tonight. But are you going to miss the creativity from like Nathan Robinson? Of course you are. It's about how the team compensates.
Sorry, we're not a one-man team.
What I was trying to say was that it's then about how the team compensates for him not being there. You do it with any player who's not playing. You don't just sit there and go, oh, it's not because he's here. It's about getting on with it. And I don't think for a lot of the game tonight we did.
Because Cardiff obviously play a game that is very much suited to their own rink, and they've struggled usually when they've come into the bigger arenas, but tonight they seem to play those wider areas a lot better and prevented Panthers from playing that more expansive game that certainly they played last week against Sheffield. Sheffield.
Yeah, I think that's right, Jono. It seemed like they were struggling for the first period. Obviously, we were on top, I think, for the first period, and we looked like we might go on and win the game quite comfortably. But as the game went on, Cardiff got accustomed to the dimensions of the ring, and obviously the ice pad being a lot bigger than what they're used to down in Cardiff. And they played a really gritty game, and they were going for it every shift. People were putting the bodies on the line, getting the sticks down in areas, just stopping and breaking up the flow of the game from our perspective. And I think that we struggled. We didn't really have an answer in response, and maybe Robinson not being there was a factor of sorts, but I think a lot of people are looking to Higgins to be his natural successor, bit of a playmaker, got a lot of assists last year for Belfast. In time it might happen, we don't know yet, because Higgins is still finding his feet after injury. But like Aaron said though earlier, I think you've got to give credit to Cardiff. They had a game plan, they stuck very carefully to it, and they've gone away tonight with 2 points, so full credit to them.
Is this indicative though of how close the league is this year? Because now I think there's very, very little between the top four, with Braehead losing tonight, Sheffield beating Belfast, and now Panthers just getting the point from this game. It'll probably start drawing Cardiff in if they can get a run together. It seems to be an incredibly close elite league this year, where it is true any team can beat any other on any night.
Well, yeah, I agree. I mean, I think we'll probably come to the point of where we take stock of a game tonight and we go, actually that point that we've got could be crucial. And like you say, tonight's results just draws the pack closer, don't it? I've said many a time that I don't think anybody's going to run away with the league this year like Belfast did last year, and I think it's about accumulating as many points as you can, when you're not playing badly, when you're not playing well, we didn't play well tonight, but we got a point. And for me, especially after the second period, I thought, do you know what, if we win tonight's game, I think it'll be a very good win, because coming off the defeat to Edinburgh, we've now just had a game that was a very tough game. Cardiff really did push us to the limit, and they actually pushed us so far in the fact that we didn't get the 2 points. But I think that's what we needed in a way, because what I wouldn't have liked to see was, coming off the defeat to Edinburgh, to come here and easily win a game against Cardiff, because I think that would have gave us the wrong kind of attitude and the wrong mentality from a fan base and a team base. The team that wins the Elite League this year is going to have to grind it out. Simple as that. You are going to have to get a point when you're not playing well. You're going to have to take the 2 points when they're on offer. And, like I say, that point tonight, it might actually turn out to be a decent point, because I don't actually think we deserve the 2.
Once again though, we only conceded 2 goals, so it seems to me that the defence is doing its job. And aside from last week's game against Sheffield, where we scored 7, we still don't seem to be troubling the scorers that much. Do you see that as being an issue going forward for the rest of the season?
Well, it's got to be, hasn't it? Because it's a cliche, you have to score more goals than the opposition. I mean, I thought, you say we only let 2 in tonight, I thought it was not, shall we say, one of our best defensive performances. And, we had the chances that, when you've got a team that's playing well, would have gone in. But they didn't. And, that is ultimately, I think, why we didn't win the game.
And finally, just want to go on to Ben Bounds, who really does seem to have grown leaps and bounds as a netminder since he moved to Cardiff. After playing exceptionally well for Hull for a couple of seasons, he's obviously come into the EIHL conference because he wanted to test himself more against the bigger teams, and he really seems to be coming along. And I think he's certainly challenging Stephen Murphy as Great Britain's number 1.
For me, number 1 netminder for the GB. I really do believe that. You know, tonight, I was saying to the people around me, you're actually going to have to take, it's going to take something special to beat him. You know, and I seriously do think, as well as Murphy has been for many years, you know, from a Belfast point of view and a GB point of view, when you see Ben Bounds, that is the number one netminder for GB.
Yeah, absolutely agree with Aaron on that. I think he was exceptional tonight. I know we didn't have our strongest night offensively, but you know, the stuff that we did get up to his net, and we had 38 shots. I mean, I suppose you can't forget that, can you? He made some really good saves. He's a bit of a scrambling, a bit of a sprawling netminder. You know, sometimes he does ride his luck a little bit because he finds himself on the ice a bit, but he's got great recovery time, really good recovery time, and he can get back up. He can stop those second and third shots really well. I think there's a few sequence of shots tonight where he did well because we thought that the puck was going to disappear behind him, but he had a good night, and you know, I think it's a really good pick up for Cardiff. He will develop as a netminder. I think he's only 22, 23, so he might not even be as old as that, so he's going to mature into a really good netminder over the next 5 or 10 years, and definitely GB's number one netminder for a long, long time.
There were times tonight where he kind of just sprawled over the ice. I like that. He was literally at some stage lying across in front of goal. And fair enough, you might say to people, well, if you lift the puck, you'll get it in. But in that instant, when you're talking about natural instinct, his natural instinct was to guard the whole of the goal from, you know, the floor point of view. And I like that because it's somebody that is willing to do what he possibly can do in that sense to stop the puck going in.
He's an unorthodox netminder, but he's got great agility. So if he does go down, you know, I suppose he backs himself to get back up, you know, make that save if somebody does try and lift the puck into the top of the net. You know, tonight he made a couple of good saves where he did just that. So I think that, you know, he's a little bit unconventional, but it works, and that's the key thing, you know. And more often than not, you know, if he still plays at Cardiff or he gets a move to an arena side, well, I think Cardiff are moving to an arena rather than next year, so they'll become an arena team. I think that he's going to develop and he's going to become a really, really fine netminder, if he's not already a fine netminder now.
I think Adam's just like kind of served a tennis ball up there, because for me, and what I'd like to, you know, ask the people that listen to this is, with Cardiff moving to an arena next season, do they think that Ben Bounds actually needs to go to a Belfast, a Sheffield or a Nottingham to actually progress into the netminder that we possibly think he could be? Because I actually had this conversation with Paul in front of me, who sits in front of me, and he was like, well, he's going to move on eventually. And I was like, but I don't actually think he needs to, because, you know, Cardiff eventually, you know, next season they're moving into their own arena. They're eventually going to become a challenging side season in, season out. So does Bounds need to actually move on? And I think it would be good to get a bit of, you know, reaction from Cardiff fans, from, you know, even Hull fans who have had him, you know, for many years, and other fans from around the Elite League, to think, does he need to move to a Belfast, a Nottingham or a Sheffield, or will he actually fulfil his potential at Cardiff?
So those were the thoughts from Saturday night. Of course, on Sunday night, Panthers took on the Belfast Giants in Belfast, which was a 2-1 regular time defeat. To talk about that game, I'm delighted to welcome, as ever, Mr. Aaron Lord.
Good evening, Jono.
Good evening. And I'm also delighted to have from Premier Sports a view from the bridge. And of course, if you had the webcast on Sunday, you would have heard his excellent commentary. It's of course Neil, the coach, Russell. How are you, mate?
Jono, pleasure to be on Cat's Whiskers. I know I was probably second choice behind Paddy Smith, and I know Davy McGimsey will have had absolutely no chance of getting an invite on the Cat's Whiskers, but delighted to be on the show.
Great to have you on, mate. So, Sunday, Panthers against Belfast. Coach, I'll come to you first. Edge of your seat or a bit of a bore fest?
The opening first period was scrappy, albeit there were 2 goals within it. Obviously, with the Giants going ahead, short-handed as well through Robbie Sandrock, and then I think it was maybe Brian Schmidt got the game-tying goal with just under a couple of minutes to go in that first period. I thought the opening 5, maybe 7 minutes of the game was very scrappy, kind of to and fro and what have you. Did settle down, as I say, the Giants got that go-ahead goal, but you know, overall, I thought it was a good game of hockey. Was it edge of the seat stuff? No, it wasn't. Has there been that much edge of the seat type hockey that I have seen this season, certainly from a Giants perspective, even though we're sitting at the top of the league. In any of the games that I've really seen, there hasn't been too much edge of your seat type stuff, but I thought it was a good game of hockey. Maybe just lacking a wee bit of the overall physical play that I like in the game as well.
Aaron, you like me had the webcast. Do you agree with the coach, or do you think it was not a great game, or do you think it was a classic?
I wouldn't say it was a classic by all means, and yeah, I kind of agree with what the coach is saying there. And you know, they're two very closely matched teams. They're going to kind of cancel each other out in a lot of games, and I think the coach was saying it during commentary as well, that it just looked like a one-goal game, and you know, it ended up to be that way. And from our point of view, sadly, it was for the Giants, but. We're just going to be up there with them, I think, at the end of the season, and we're going to have these type of games that are going to be closely fought, like I said, and it's just about trying to match them in. And to be fair, actually, what I would like to say is I thought the Giants outmatched us on the boards. I thought they used their physicality, you know, far better than what we did, and I think that kind of unsettled our players a few times, and it caused us to turn the puck over, etc. And you know, I think we can play better, but I'm sure the coach will say that Belfast can play better as well.
Yeah, no, I agree with you about. I think it was actually my co-commentator Simon Kitchen made reference to the battles along the boards, and how like he's a former hockey player himself and played internationally for Ireland and what have you. You know, he was a superb local player, and he always talks about the battles along the boards being absolutely critical in a game of hockey, and I agree with you. I think the Giants did dominate that overall. You know, when I say a physical game, I'm talking more about the checking side of the game. I thought you're quite right. You know, the likes of Westgarth, Sawada, these guys are they're physical down low, so they are, and you know, we were probably the more dominant team along the boards, and it's so critical as well. Someone who's really good along the boards as well, from a Giants perspective, is Craig Peacock. He doesn't get the credit he deserves down low, but no, listen, a tight game. You know, all you have to do is look at the shots on goal. It was 32-31 in favour of the Giants from memory. You know, and you're right. You know, we did say it on quite a few occasions. It was going to be a one goal game, and so it proved to be in the end.
Obviously, it was the fourth game for Kevin Westgarth, who was signed as your 12th import recently. I thought he was a bit quiet on Sunday. I didn't really notice him apart from when he got into a bit of a ruckus with Jonathan Boxhill, but that was really it. I mean, he stood out, I believe, on the first weekend he played for you, but for me, I didn't think he really stamped his authority on the game on Sunday.
I couldn't agree more. You know, I watched the Steelers webcast, which is a very good production as well, actually, on Saturday evening, and Westgarth did not have his best game by any stretch of the imagination. He just appeared quite sluggish. You know, he had a good chance as well on Saturday evening to put one on Doyle, and he just didn't get the shot off, and the defenseman was able to nip back and get the puck off him, and he was reasonably sluggish again on Sunday evening against you guys as well. You know, just Thorts has talked a few times about, you know, these guys, you know, likes of Westgarth. He's used to playing like 5-6 minutes a night in the NHL for the last 5 or 6 seasons, and all of a sudden he's coming into our league and he's expected to be playing upwards of 22 minutes a night, if not more. You know, so it's and the other thing, and Thornton talks speaks very articulately about it. You know, about almost like Westgarth defining his role in the league, and I think he's probably still trying to find that exactly what he can get away with. But you know, certainly from my perspective, as somebody who enjoys the physical aspect of the game, likes to see players finishing their checks, I would like to see a wee bit more of that out of him, and you know, leading into this weekend. Well, maybe not so much this weekend in Europe, but certainly back in Elite League action for the Giants. But I couldn't agree more with you. I thought overall this weekend he had a very quiet weekend.
Aaron, who impressed you from Panthers' point of view on Sunday?
That's a question. I thought Modic had a good game, you know, which has turned out to be his last game, as we found out today, flying home to Sweden. I thought he had a good game. I thought, you know, I'd say possibly nobody really stood out.
Belfast Datsuk, no?
Well, is he that name now? I don't think he is he? I think
we need to find.
He's just Chris Higgins for us at the moment.
We need to find a new nickname for Chris Higgins. I think
we do. We need to take that away from Davey, to be honest. But no, I mean, to be fair, Higgins did pull out one fantastic pass, which I think was in the first period, where he just pulled it straight in front of net, and I just don't think anybody was expecting that. But we haven't seen enough of Chris Higgins so far this season due to injury, but I'm sure we'll see plenty from him for the remainder of the season. But for me, nobody really stood out. It was kind of like everybody played okay, but in games like that, you need your match winners, and we didn't have that on Sunday night, unfortunately.
Do you know one thing? I'm kind of probably flipping this on its head slightly. From a Giants perspective, as somebody I've watched Belfast Nottingham games for years and years, and obviously we have talked extensively about the one-sided rivalry and the whole never forgive, never forget night and all that type of stuff. So from a Belfast perspective, we're always used to seeing going into the NIC, or you guys coming over to the Odyssey Arena and seeing what I would always define as Panthers hockey, a couple of big physical defensemen, your Jason Beckett's, your Guy Lepines, your big physical power forward in the likes of, say, a Lee Salters from last year. And then within that, intertwined with that, you've always got your skill guys, your Jade Galbraiths, your PC Druins, your Lee Jimmins, your David Lings. And I think you've got a good hockey team this year. Do not get me wrong. I think you've got a good hockey team. And I think when Maxime Perrin comes back, he's a super centre player. By all reports, got a fantastic shot and all the rest. And I think once you guys like ourselves are back to full strength, you guys will be really good. But have you guys, I suppose the question is, have you guys maybe lost that old Panthers identity? Has Corey moved on from that element of hockey?
I think Corey's gone to a more defensive mindset, certainly this season. I think that's probably why there's an awful lot of criticism, which we'll talk about a little later in the show. But I do think that defensively we are excellent this season. I've been really, really impressed with the defence. And then, of course, you've had Kowalski as a netminder, who's superb. We've had Mattis Modig come in to cover for him while he's been injured, who's also been superb. So we seem to be more defensively minded. Now, of course, we're not scoring that many goals, which is probably going to become a problem. There isn't sort of the natural out-and-out goal scorer, apart from sort of like your David Clark, your Bruce Grahams, but they need to be getting the service. So it is quite a shift from the normal sort of Panthers and Corey Nielsen mentality. However, it has been proven time after time that defence wins championships. So I'm quite happy with the way things are at the minute. I know others aren't, but I'll take that every time.
Yeah. No, as I say, you always just like that treble winning season, as we like to call it, not Grand Slam winning season. That treble winning season. That Nottingham Panthers side to me ticked every single box. Yeah. I like physical defensemen. You guys had it with Guy Lepine and Jason Beckett. As I say, you need a top netminder. You have it. You had it with Craig Kowalski, obviously back from injury now. And then you had fantastic snipers like that David Ling and Bruce Graham partnership. Was absolutely fantastic to watch. And I'm not sure of it. I suppose Chris Higgins is maybe your David Ling moving forward, but as you say, Chris Higgins is coming back from injury, and once he gets into his stride, I know you see quite a bit of vitriol now from Belfast Giants fans. It's almost sacrilegious for a Belfast Giant to move across to Nottingham, but once he gets into his stride, Chris Higgins is a fantastic hockey player to watch, and come April time, I'm sure he'll be thereabouts, moving his way up the charts for you guys.
I think for me, one thing that that you've brought up there, Coach, and I think a lot of Panthers fans listening to this will be saying and thinking exactly what you've just said about the Jason Beckett, who for me he was quite underrated in that Grand Slam winning team.
Absolutely was, yeah.
And I would kill to have a Jason Beckett back. And I think from the power kind of forward, you mentioned Lee Salters, and that for me has always been a weird one. Why he wasn't given another season back at the Panthers? And I think, like I say, I think there'll be a lot of Panthers fans out there asking the same question, and they have done to us. And like Jono says, we'll discuss it later. That maybe Corey has changed his recruitment this season, and we seem to be a lot. You hear from Corey Nielsen about a bit of more youth. The roster's got a little bit younger from last season, and he's talked about a bit of speed across the ice. And I think the only problem at the moment is there's Panthers fans out there that can't see that. So the questions are starting to be asked, but it's that Grand Slam winning team was just one in a million, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, and let's face it, I mean, how often do you get teams that completely dominate that in this league? I mean, I think the last one was Coventry in 2005, so, it's very rare that you get a team that totally...
Well, the coach might disagree with you there, because
certainly, we should have done a lot better last season.
Yeah.
I think you probably should have done.
Yeah,
certainly.
I'll tell you. I'll throw this to you. And sorry, I know we're supposed to be talking about the game specifically, but one guy who I absolutely would have loved to have seen in a Belfast Giants uniform, and I know, Jono, you'll know who I'm going to mention here, and somebody who I think you guys have missed over the last 2 seasons is Jordan Fox. Jordan Fox was your heartbeat, our heartbeat, number 47, Adam Keefe in Belfast, and I think you guys have struggled to replace Jordan Fox.
How do you replace a Jordan Fox? I'm not sure you can replace a Jordan Fox to a certain degree, but that type of player, then by all means, I don't want to use your catchphrase, the heartbeat, but he really was. To say in his final season he played D for 95% of it and still had the effect that he did on our games, just shows you what quality player Jordan Fox is. And it's a strange one, and people go, well, he's not got a club at the moment. He's I mean, if people watch his Ice Bucket Challenge, he's he's a little
he's enjoyed his summer.
Yeah, he's enjoyed his summer, yeah, that's for sure. But I would just love to see him back in the Panthers jersey.
You see, I'm one of these who sometimes thinks you probably should never go back, because are they ever as good when they come back the second time? And
you could ask that question about Bruce Graham then, surely.
But Graham's still sort of in his peak. I mean, I'm thinking more like the big one was, of course, PC Druin, who I loved in his first spell at the Panthers, and then he came back a few seasons later and he just didn't have the same impact, and it was a real shame, and he ended up getting cut, because it dulls your view, because he was one of my all-time Panthers heroes. He was just such a wonderful player to watch. And I suppose in a way, Jeffrey Swez, who, although you won the title last season, he probably didn't have the impact he had on games that he did in his first spell at Belfast.
No, I couldn't agree more. But yet, statistically, I can't remember exactly, but I think you've been looking at the guts of 67, 68 points in 53, 54 games from Swez, which if you'd been offered that at the start of the season, whenever Todd Kellman and Paul Leahy signed him, you would have said, shook his hand and said, thank you very much. The big difference in terms of Swez compared to his first tenure with the Belfast Giants, firstly, I think the league has improved dramatically from whenever Swez was first here, but he definitely had lost that overall bite that he once had. Maybe you're quite right. Maybe you don't ever go back, because do players come back with the same hunger, energy, passion that they did whenever they first signed? Who knows? Swez was an incredibly talented boy, and you talk about the physical aspect. Like, Swez did offer out, wanted to drop the gloves on so many occasions last season, but nobody wanted to go with him. Nobody went with him. Such was the respect level that guy has accumulated over his years as a professional hockey player. But Giants fans were all over him because it appeared that he wasn't trying out on the ice. Paul Leahy always used to say that sometimes it's harder for bigger guys, in terms of you don't think they're working as hard, but they actually are. Where you see smaller guys that tend to be nippier around the ice, but the big guys are working. They just happen to have a bigger stride than the smaller guys, so it appears that the smaller guys are working harder. So, but listen, I couldn't agree more. It's I just thought the Jordan Fox one was a good one to throw up for a debate there.
A player like him would be very nice, I think, but. Well, we'll see. We'll see. Just to bring it back to Sunday very, very quickly, because it was the home debut of your new netminder, Carson Tubac, and I thought he looked very impressive.
Very much so. He had a difficult first minute or so over in Sheffield on Saturday night, and we're all watching the webcast thinking, oh no, here we go. But he had actually ended up having a fantastic game on Saturday evening and did very well, just like your guy Modig on Sunday. I thought it was, both netminders were, for me, and Simon on commentary were both man of the matches. Chubak looks a very good pickup. Played some EIHL last season. He kind of got thrown around a wee bit. He's come in here with a bit of a strange CV. He started off very well, had a good NCAA chapter, and then picked up, I think he's had a knee and a hip operation. For a young guy, he's only turned 24, 25. And then obviously ended up in the AHL, dropped down into the East Coast and what have you last year. And it was quite strange. I hadn't really got to the bottom of it as to why he hadn't a team so far this season, because his CV is good, but he came in and I thought he played really well on Sunday evening, just as Modig did as well for you guys. Mm.
So just to move on to some of the other games that took place over the weekend, I suppose we ought to start with Saturday night and the game against the Steelers. So, big game, top of the table clash. So, what went wrong? Because I think I saw some tweets from you during Saturday's game, and you I don't think you was that impressed with the quality.
I wasn't impressed with the quality, Jono, of either Sheffield or Belfast, to be honest with you. I thought it was a lacklustre game. I thought, I was expecting it to be a lot more physical from both teams. It lacked that bite, that kind of intensity that you would expect from a top of the table type clash, or certainly whenever Belfast play Sheffield or Nottingham play Sheffield or Belfast play Nottingham, it's always it should always be intense, and it wasn't. I thought the quality of hockey overall wasn't that great to watch. There was quite a few individual mistakes within the game. I thought Frank Doyle was superb, pulled off a couple of fantastic saves for Sheffield. There was a dodgy goal which Mike Hicks gave. I think if you were to go and look at the Steelers' highlights of their second goal, for me, that was not a goal. And I think it's fairly conclusive once you break it down and screenshot it and stop it and pause it and stop it and pause it and all the rest. It wasn't a goal. But that being said, probably Sheffield deserved it, probably just overall. But in terms of the overall quality of hockey, listen, I know from a Giants perspective, we went into that game, obviously, Chubak was in for Murphy, who's badly injured. McCutcheon and Compton were both out, and then Mark Garside picked up the very bad arm injury I think it was in the opening first period, and that's him done for the next 6 to 8 weeks as well. So, we're playing three bodies down in that game up against a full strength Sheffield Steelers. So it was a difficult game. It was always going to be difficult for the Giants to go in there and pick up the 2 points. But just thought I left it a bit disappointed, to be honest with you, and a wee bit peeved off at the overall quality of the game.
Aaron, Sheffield went and beat Braehead, of course, who were at the top of the table on Sunday 4-1. Steelers, after being pretty much destroyed by Panthers previous week, have really picked up their game, and they're starting to look quite dangerous now.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it, didn't we, on a previous episode, about how their performance when they played us down here, and how Gerard Adams just wasn't happy and sort of asked the questions of his players, and they've responded in the perfect way, haven't they? They've got a 4-point weekend. They've beaten two rivals at the top of the table, and that can only breed confidence. And I mean, I'd just like to ask the coach while we've got him on there, and obviously with Belfast playing them on the Saturday, what do you actually think to Sheffield? Like people say about their top line is one of the best top liners in the elite league this season, but do you think they've got sort of the strength in depth to perform and win games when that top line isn't performing? Because we've seen from a Panthers point of view, when we've kept that top line rather quiet, the Steelers have struggled.
I'll put my neck out and say that I think Nottingham and Belfast definitely have the overall better British core. That's my honest opinion on it. The players that stood out for me on Saturday evening, and I've only seen a couple of the Sheffield games, so I can't really give a full accurate summation really on their team. But two players that stood out for me were Tyler Mosienko and Matthew Waugh. I think Jared Adams has put together a really good squad this season. They've recruited well. I like Jared Adams. I debate this quite a bit with Paddy and Davey, my colleagues on The View from the Bridge, and Paddy would say, it'd be interesting to see, does Jared Adams have the skill set and the wherewithal to kind of lead his team to a league championship this season. But I like Adams. I think how he portrays himself in camera, in front of camera, isn't how he would necessarily be with the guys. I think he would be a wee bit more chatty and a bit more kind of not in people's faces, but I think he'd be a bit more lively out on the ice and what have you. And I think he's a player's coach, a wee bit like Ryan Finnerty in some ways. I think the players respond to him, and I think come March, the middle of March, I think the Sheffield Steelers are obviously going to be there or thereabouts.
Mm. Of course, another team who had a fabulous weekend was the Edinburgh Capitals, who, of course, beat Panthers last week and then had a victory over the Dundee Stars on Saturday and then another victory over the Fife Flyers on Sunday. So, after looking very much down in the doldrums, they've certainly picked up recently.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've said before as well, haven't we, that you can't write anybody off this in this league and this season especially. Everybody has recruited well. That they've kind of improved as well. And look, Edinburgh didn't have the greatest of starts, but they've got some big scalps this weekend, and scalps that are in their conference as well, which will do that and them a world of good.
Coach, of course, one of their victories on Saturday night was Dundee. After they sort of picked up a little bit, it's not looking too great for them at the moment.
Yeah, Dundee have had a difficult start, especially after last season. Their expectations, they did so well last year, and they were sitting in second place behind the Giants for quite a long time last season. And as we call him in Belfast, Jeff John. Don't ask us why we call him that, but Jeff Hutchins he did a very good job there last season. I think expectations rose considerably on the back of that, and quite rightly so. You can see the level of production that they put on last year in terms of their overall quality of their team, and Hutchins probably just hasn't recruited as well. I think the big standout miss for them is Dan Bacala. It's so difficult to replace a goaltender of that quality, and they've brought in Evan Chevry's brother, Mark Chevry, I think is his first name. He hasn't really kind of won them games, whereas Dan Bacala, and I can't remember the previous goaltender that a GM the previous season as well, Jeff Hutchins was able to pick up. He was an absolute stud in the league as well.
Yeah, his name is going to come to me when we've finished recording.
Yeah. His name escapes me, but he seems to always land these top goaltenders, and I think probably Chevry just hasn't started this season off the way, obviously, the likes of Bacala and the previous goaltender as well for them.
Okay. Well, before we let you go, Coach, we need to obviously talk a little bit about this coming weekend, and you, of course, in the Continental Cup semi-final in France. How do you see it as a Giants fan? Is it a sort of pleasant distraction, or do you think it's something that could possibly derail the good form that you've had recently?
I think, well, my own personal opinion, taking my Belfast Giants hat off, I think it's important that the Elite League our teams, whether it be the Nottingham Panthers in the Champions Hockey League, whether it be the Belfast Giants in the Continental Cup, whatever format it is, I think it's important that we, as teams, go into those competitions. I think it's important that we represent our league and do it well. I thought we did really well. I really enjoyed the games over in Germany. We went into that one a few bodies light, which at the time I wasn't overly enamoured with. I felt that if we're going to enter these competitions, we need to try and be at full strength. And obviously we saw last year with you guys, with the amount of injuries you picked up, Corey. I know you got a lot of stick for it as a club, but Corey went out and brought in guys for a month here and a month there to cover for injuries. But we managed to get through it in second place, and we've got into the semi-final. And hopefully the Giants are going to be as close to full strength as possible. I think Mike Compton and Mark McCutcheon are going to be back this weekend after quite a lengthy layout. Certainly for McCutcheon, he's only played 5 games. But I think overall, it's important that we go there and represent the Elite League well. I don't think it's necessarily a big distraction. I mean, okay, it's 3 more games, but I actually think it's a good thing to kind of get away and experience new places. You spend, the Giants are flying out tomorrow morning over to France. They'll probably not come home to Monday evening. That's 4 or 5 days that those guys are all going to be together on the road, and sometimes that can really unify a team whenever you're away for that length of time together and playing big games and in front of good crowds. I think there's going to be a healthy crowd in that arena in France. Looks like a small, intimate type barn. So, listen, I think overall, I commended the Nottingham Panthers for entering the Champions Hockey League whenever we obviously backed out of it at the start of the season, and likewise, I think it's a positive thing that the Giants are in the Continental Cup, and I hope we'll go over there and do very well and get ourselves into the grand final.
Okay. Well, wish you and the Belfast Giants all the best for the weekend. Coach, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We really do appreciate it.
Jono Aaron, thank you very much.
Cheers, mate. For those of you who listened to the podcast last week, you may remember a question we received from Clantastic. It said, does no highlight show and large gaps between live games mean the league still doesn't buy into TV as a promotional tool? Well, me and Aaron tried to answer the question as best we can, but we thought we'd get an expert to talk about it, so I'm delighted to welcome the face of Premier Sports ice hockey coverage, Aaron Murphy. How are you, mate?
Hey, Jono, how are you? I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure to have you on. The question from Clantastic, what do you make of that?
Well, I think the Elite League really does value television as a tool. Obviously, it's where you need to live in that space, right? Any league that wants to be successful has to be on TV. It's just the way of the sports world. If you're not on TV, people ask why, whether it's sponsors or fans or new viewers trying to find your product. So for the brand and for the product, I think the Elite League does think it's very much viable. I think, it's one of those things that the Elite League has to look at the whole equation, the old adage of bums and seats as well, right? So there's always that back and forth. And I know that Premier was adamant that they wanted the playoff semifinals on TV this year if they were going to do a deal, simply because we had so many people, well, not me personally, but the network had so many people barraging through emails, Twitter, Facebook saying, how can you not have the playoff semifinals on TV? What a joke, et cetera, et cetera. And so Premier thought that people were looking at that as that Premier didn't want to do them. When in actuality, it was Premier wanted to do them, we were there. But the Elite League has, a business model, and they decided that, despite the fact our contract said playoffs, they wanted only the playoff final because that's the way it always had been done before. But we had 23 games on last year, and we didn't have the semifinals, and that really, in the eyes of people that make decisions at the network, thought that not having the semifinals was really bad from a public relations standpoint.
Yeah.
So this year they were adamant that they had to have the playoff semifinals. I mean, can you imagine watching the entire NHL season and then, not being able to watch the conference finals? Yeah. It would be a joke.
Yeah.
So they had to stick to their guns, and they came to a deal. And I think the Elite League understood, and the Elite League were actually quite good from what I know when the discussion came up. It just maybe took a little bit longer and took some, positive reinforcing on both sides. But let me make it very clear: the Elite League this season have worked to come to a good conclusion with Premier, and really want people to see good games and be a part of the brand and the product.
Who decides what games are going to be shown? Is that the league who decide, or is it Premier Sports as the broadcaster?
Well, Premier puts a list in. They put in a list in at the start of the year, and the league goes to the clubs, and they go back and forth and say, well, maybe not that one, maybe that one. So it goes. It's definitely a partnership. And once in a while, the guys at Premier will ask me what I think, and I think any game that we do is a good game. So at the end of the day, I'm happy no matter what, as long as we're on TV. So they go back and forth, and sometimes there's issues with, like, maybe they want to set up in a certain part of the building, but that's become a new season ticket block or a fan zone block. So there is a cooperation there to make sure that the clubs aren't out of pocket, i.e. losing season ticket money because, we put a camera somewhere or a desk for us to sit at. So there's a partnership there. There's a list submitted, and I'll make it easy for you as well. Like before New Year's Eve, every team will feature once. Maybe not at home, but every team will feature before New Year's Eve, at least once on Premier Sports. And then in the second half of the season, we'll submit another list, and they will look at who's playing good and what the storylines are. Obviously, in the first half of the season, it was a no-brainer to have Kelman returning to Cardiff, right? And we got a lot of good feedback on that show. And obviously, on December 27th, it's a no-brainer to have the Panthers hosting the Steelers. You got to have that game around the Christmas break. So there are some games that are no-brainers, and then some other ones that obviously they go back and forth with the league on.
Okay. Obviously, you mentioned there was 23 games last year, and I believe, is it 18 this year?
Yeah, it's 18 this year, 15 regular season, and then the playoff final weekend, and a playoff quarterfinal too, I think. So it's either 18 or 19, but it's a few less than last year, and I'll tell you, there's two things why. It's the Champions Hockey League. We had 6 Panthers games.
Yeah.
So if you look at it that way, say we have 18 Elite League games and 6 Panthers games in the CHL. There's actually 24 games on TV live this season that feature EIHL brand. Mm-hmm. So there's actually one more game this year if you want to look at it that way.
Yeah. I suppose, obviously, the CHL and SHL is taking up a lot of the time with the broadcaster. But it does seem that with these 2 new deals coming on, it's led to a decrease in the Elite League games shown. I mean, we was getting probably a game a week last year, and it sort of seems to be a bit sporadic as when the games are being shown this year. So would it be better, do you feel, if there was sort of like a game of the week like what you had last season?
Well, remember, we missed the first month and a half of the season last year because, again, Premier and the league were going back and forth trying to get a deal done. So we had to play catch-up. There was always going to probably be 20 to 23 games, whether we started in September or whether we started in November. It's just down to budgets and other programming commitments with other rights, other deals they have, from what I understand. I would think overall, for both broadcaster and the brand, the league, it would be better to have a game of the week for sure. But this year, with the playoff semifinals being on, it's more backloaded. And I think the philosophy there was, okay, it's the start of the season, we'll have the Champions Hockey League, which will figure a guaranteed 6 Panthers games. So that will be like early Elite League stuff or Elite League team featuring. And then they really wanted to have more in the second half because, as I mentioned, there was a little bit of misunderstanding last year with, I think, some viewers and subscribers going, well, how can you not have the playoff semifinals? Well, now I think Premier's philosophy was have more after Christmas into the glory part of the season as the title chase heats up, as the playoff matchups heat up, as the playoff final weekend teams are decided, and that playoff final weekend kicks off. They want to have a strong presence when it really matters.
Obviously, moving on to the games that are about to be shown, we've got, I believe, Hull and Dundee on Saturday, and I believe Paul Adey's with you for that one.
Yeah, Paul's with me, and I tell you what, he does a great job. Paul knows the game inside and out, and I know Paul very well from his time in Belfast. Mm-hmm. I did some work with the Giants last year, and we did some games up there for Premier. So Paul and I have very good back and forth, and I mean the Panthers game where they beat Hamburg at the NIC, he and I worked together. I'll remember that for a long time for his knowledge, but also his excitement. Mm-hmm. He's a legend in Nottingham, both as a player and coach, and I think he was really proud of the Panthers' accomplishment that night. So looking forward to doing a game, and I have never done a game in Hull. I was in Sochi last year when we visited Hull. Yeah. So this will be my first game at the Hull Ice Arena, and I think it's going to be a good one. Hull and Dundee both need a win, so it should be a beauty game. Yeah,
it's a great rink as well. I absolutely love the place. So moving on, I mean, there's a few cracking games coming up by the looks of it. So we've got a raft of games in December with Coventry, Sheffield, Clan against Stars, which should be a tasty one, and then of course, as you mentioned, the big one, Panthers against Steelers. Of course, you did that last year, so sold out building should be good for the viewers. Oh,
it should be great, and you know what? It's great for the broadcasters. I think Paul Adey I mean, unless he gets a coaching job, which is very possible, he's a fantastic coach. If Paul is available, he's already been asked to do that one, and he's already been asked to join me in Coventry against the Steelers on December 14th as well. So you're going to see, well, hopefully for us, the broadcaster and the viewer, we see lots of Paul, but I also know that he will be behind a bench sooner rather than later, is my guess. But that game on December 27th will be a fantastic game. And the way the Steelers are playing right now, I think that everyone wants to see them. And that game, December 14th in Coventry, will be a good one as well. The Clan Dundee one will be tasty. The All-Scottish affairs are always good, and that is a fantastic building in Braehead. So I think Neil Russell will be joining me for that one. Yeah. It's going to be good. And you know what? Again, this is it, right? Like, the broadcaster wanted it to be like, okay, Christmas is an important time because they know about the sort of the Christmas break between the Panthers and the Steelers. So they wanted that one, and they wanted some Christmas treats, shall we say, in December. So there's a good example of why there's been a little bit of a break. But again, just the last point on the semifinals. The semifinals, because they will be shown for the first time ever, they cost Premier a little bit extra as well. Mm-hmm. So to be able to show those games when they matter the most, it costs them a little bit more. So they might have had to, between that, the Champions Hockey League with the Panthers, they might have had to rejig the lineup. But let me tell you what, there's going to be some great games, Christmas obviously, and then the New Year. And the way the league is going right now, it's so close, and the Steelers are really starting to heat up. Every game after Christmas into the New Year is going to be like a playoff game. So I think hopefully the viewers will forget that there was a little bit of a gap here, but that gap was also filled with incredible hockey. If you watched Red Bull Salzburg and Lulea hockey in their playoff home and away leg, I'm sorry, no offense to the Elite League, no offense to any league, that was an incredible 2 games of hockey, and it was something I'll never forget, Colin. I mean, to be ahead 8-3 on aggregate, Red Bull Salzburg, and for Lulea hockey to come back and win that in a shootout. I mean, we had to show that, we had to show that, and that's a cause for the gaps too. But I mean, those kind of games don't grow on trees, and that was really a neat couple of games of hockey in the Champions Hockey League.
Well, I said we saw the quality of Lulea in Nottingham, and of course in the away game that was shown on Premier Sports. Absolutely superb team.
Oh, fantastic to watch, and the way they came back. I mean, a lot of teams would have folded up the tent, right, when they were trailing 8-3 on aggregate after that first period. In Salzburg, and they came back to win in a shootout, as I mentioned. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I had to pinch myself a few times. So, look, I know people want to see their team and all that, but once you endeavor on something like the Champions Hockey League, you've got to follow through on that as well. And we're going to have the quarterfinals and the semifinals and the final all live on Premier 2. So, look, there's maybe a few less proper Elite League games. But like if you include the 6 Panthers games in the Champions League, there's actually one more than there would have been last year, if you want to look at it technically that way. And then you're getting all this great Champions Hockey League. People shouldn't forget that all the Team GB games are going to be live from April 13th to the 19th in Eindhoven. That's 5 games featuring Team GB. I mean, there's a lot of hockey. There's over 600 hockey games on Premier Sports this year, including, obviously, 15 NHL games a week. The Winter Classic will be live New Year's Day. NHL Tonight is every day the highlight show. Like I said, the Champions League will have live fixtures right up until the grand final. And the Swedish Hockey League will be online before Christmas. I'll be calling those games. I can't wait. And you saw what Lulea did. I mean, it's incredible the amount of hockey that's coming up. So hopefully people will remember how the season ends and not how it began, because it still has begun pretty good. We had Kelman's return. We had some good games. I mean, we've had that game in Fife we did earlier in the season was an absolutely cracking game. So there has been the games. I know another thing that I think maybe Clantastic asked you was about the highlight show. Is that
yes,
correct?
That's correct. Yes. So obviously there's been no highlight show this season. So what's the thinking behind that, or is it just something that you cannot fit into the schedule now?
It's nothing to do with fitting it in. It's again, when Premier was going back and forth, and again, I wasn't in these meetings, when Premier was going back and forth with the EIHL decision makers, the feedback was, let's have some more steady co-commentators. So like Paul Adey is going to be on a lot. Neil Russell had the really good feedback last year from the viewers, and Premier picked up on that. So we've got a more steady sort of co-host with me, if you will. Another one of the feedback was that this is from the league. The highlight show was good in that it serviced everyone, got some time, but some people felt it did more harm than good because some of the footage, how do I put this nicely? Some of the footage wasn't great on TV. So, for example, the Steelers do a very good job on their highlights package, right? Everyone knows that they're maybe the gold standard. The Belfast Giants as well. Those teams would send us highlights, and they would send us in a timely fashion. So they would send it to the producer with days to spare. Other teams, and this is to no fault of the teams other than maybe they don't have the volunteers or the staff or the budget, some of the footage would look like maybe it was shot on your iPhone.
Yeah.
Just to be frank, okay? I'm just being honest. This is what I heard through Premier from some of the people at the league that make decisions. So putting together a highlight show that on one clip looks TV worthy, and then cutting to something that looks like maybe someone, shot on a non-broadcast format.
Yeah.
Doesn't look good for the league when sponsors tune in. I'm guessing would have been their thinking. So they thought a better game, a better show, with more steady sort of co-commentators, maybe more features, would be better. And there's some new things coming online that I don't even know about after Christmas. Some different features, maybe some different camera angles. But the thing is with the highlight show, look, I like doing it. I want to see everybody too. But if some footage is good and some isn't bad, then it was the feedback was it did more harm than good.
Fair enough. Well, Murph, I think we're going to wrap it up there, but thanks very much for your time. We really, really appreciate you coming on and answering that question.
Hey, no problem, Jono. And if anyone has any questions like that in the future, please feel free to reach out. And I'll do my best. Like I said, I don't know all the answers, and I'm not privy to all the information, but I'll certainly let you know what I know if it's applicable.
Great stuff. So it's at Murph on Ice on Twitter.
Yeah, that's the one, and murphonice.com, and of course at Premier Sports TV. Those guys love to hear the good feedback, and you can check all the features about all your fixtures for the upcoming EIHL, Swedish Hockey League, Champions Hockey League, and of course NHL, World Championships, all that at premiersports.tv.
Great stuff. Thanks for your time, Murph.
Cheers. Thanks for having me on, Jono. Anytime, buddy.
Panthers have two games coming up this weekend against Scottish opposition. Saturday they're away to the Fife Flyers at the wonderful Fife Arena, and then at home on Sunday to the Dundee Stars. Delighted to welcome to the Cats Whiskers podcast one of the experts on Scottish hockey, Slapshot Scotland himself, Craig Anderson.
Hi, Jono.
Hi, thanks for joining us, mate. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, no problem. Just to correct you, I would never ever call myself an expert. Many people would agree with that, so I'll stop with that one before it gets out of hand.
Yeah, you're more of an expert than what we are. So, before we move on to this weekend's games, I just want to ask quickly about, obviously, Fife and Braehead on Saturday, which seemed it was a bit of a tasty clash. So, what exactly went on there?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, I've heard so many different versions of it. I wasn't at Fife Ice Arena on Saturday. I was working elsewhere, so like many people I was keeping an eye on it through social media and things like that, and of course it came to light that certain incidents were happening between the Braehead Clan bench and the Fife fans that were sitting behind them. A couple of pictures had materialised on social media of stewards gathered around the Clan bench, and of course I spoke to Ryan Finnerty on Sunday after the Clan lost 4-1 at Sheffield, and according to him he was getting poked and prodded by the fans behind him. He said they were throwing rubbish onto the bench and things like that as well. That kind of behaviour was going on. One chap, I believe, was actually escorted from the building. There's been rumours of other things going on as well, water getting squirted and things like that. Altogether quite unsavoury. So the story went out yesterday, as I told you, it was Monday night. I got a response from Fife Today, which is on the Slapshot Scotland Facebook page, in response to the incident, and it's caused quite a storm. To be perfectly honest with you,
it's not great, but I suppose it's one of the things about Fife. I mean, I've been up there a few times, and I absolutely love it. I love the atmosphere, and I love the feel of the place. It's proper old school hockey barn, and I think sometimes the atmosphere can probably get on top of some of the opposition players and coaches.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Like you, I like Fife for the very same reasons that you've outlined there, John. It's an old style feel to the place. that the amount of people that are in there really generates some amount of noise. And as a fan watching, as you've just said, it's great to watch. It makes for a great atmosphere, but there is that intimidatory factor, and perhaps because the rivalry between Braehead and Fife has become so prominent in the last couple of years as well, maybe that's playing a factor in it as well. The last thing we want to see is unpleasantness between the two teams. We want a good friendly rivalry, but the backwards and forwards stuff that's been on social media today has got out of hand at times. I think there's a lot of, I know a lot of good Fife fans, for example, but there's a minority, and there's a minority across all teams. I'm not just blaming Fife or Braehead for that matter. There's a minority in all fans that can spoil it for everybody else, and that is apparently what the accusation is here. But take nothing away from what Fife Ice Arena is all about. It's a great place for fans to watch hockey. It's a great place for players to play, and it should always be that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously Panthers are in there on Saturday night. How much is that hostile crowd going to be of a help to the Fife team? We've seen it time in, time out where they sometimes worth probably an extra goal or two. Panthers have really got to be on their guard because it's some atmosphere that can be created at that place.
Well, that's it. The Panthers come up to Scotland. Their record in Scotland, I think, recently hasn't been that good, so they need to win on Saturday. It's as important as that. But Fife won't make it easy for them. Never mind the team and what they do on the ice, but again, you've touched upon the fans' kind of input into the game as well. The Panthers are still very much a team to beat in the league. They may not be champions anymore, but they've got the kind of players that fans just for some reason don't like, and I think because they're wearing a Panther shirt, I think that's another major issue as well. Those fans can play a huge part on Saturday night, no question. As you say, it's worth probably an extra goal to them. And we've seen some controversial incidents between Fife and Nottingham in the last couple of years as well, playoff quarter-finals and the like, penalty shots that may or may not have gone in. And that's the last thing you want to see, controversies like that. You want to see a clean game, a good entertaining game, and you'll always get that in Fife, irrespective of who the opposition are.
Well, of course, Fife just one place behind Nottingham in the table, 18 points from 18 games. They never seem to get a run together. They sort of have a couple of wins and then there's a bad defeat like the one they had on Sunday. I think they're the sort of team that if they could get a run of results together like they did last season in the run to the playoffs, they could be possibly even a threat to the top teams.
Yeah, but they did have a slow start to the season. It took them a few weeks to start picking up points. They've done that. They've got some big results along the way. In regards to the defeat on Sunday, I suppose you can say every defeat is a bad one, but if you saw the way they played, that game could have gone either way. Let's be honest about that. It was 3-3. It was a goal 10 seconds from the end of the game that lost them the game, unfortunately. They deserved a point, in my opinion. I thought Fife played fantastically well on Sunday. It was a game that was so finely in the balance. As I said, it could have gone either way. A little bit of luck went against them on the night. Following, having that follow-up from the 6-2 win over Braehead on Saturday, they were certainly worthy of at least a point at Murrayfield on Sunday. So that's still in mind. I think they've got a lot to be proud of in that performance. It wasn't a poor performance by any stretch of the imagination. Interesting comments from the coach Todd Dutiam when I spoke to him on Sunday in Murrayfield after the game, and he says, we can afford to nitpick. And I think by that he means in terms of how he reflects on a weekend, in terms of the points that they get. He said, before, just getting 2 points against the league leaders, as Braehead were at the time, was considered a success. But maybe slight disappointment they didn't get more than the 2 points. So I can see the point he's making, and that just shows you the strides that Fife have come. It's particularly in the since last January, when, as you touched on, that great run they had, which took them all the way to the playoff finals. Yeah, it's certainly bearing up nicely.
Moving on to Sunday night and Panthers taking on Dundee Stars at the NIC. It has not been a great season so far for the Stars, and we touched on it earlier in the show when Neil Russell was on. But why do you think Dundee are underperforming so badly when on paper they look to have a really good side?
I must admit, I'm scratching my head at that one as well. On paper, as you just said, the players that they've got have got plenty of Elite League experience throughout that team. Chris Blight, Matt Ryan, who's obviously very familiar to Panthers fans. Shane Lust was at Braehead last year. They've got good players in that team, but for some reason it's just not working. And just when you think that they get a real good win, they go and blow it. I mean, they got that win against, it was the Steelers, I think it was, a couple of weeks ago, just off the top of my head.
Yeah.
And then last weekend they completely blow it, not only against Edinburgh at home, but down in Cardiff as well. They were 2 goals up in both games and lost them both. So, Jeff Hutchins is probably scratching his head in as much as we are as to why they aren't doing well. You can argue the quality of players that they lost in the summer has hurt them more than maybe they anticipated. Dan Bacala was absolutely outstanding between the pipes for the Stars last year. Nico Sacchetti scored plenty of goals. Kashirski was a big influence on the ice as well. They've lost that. I mean, that's a core of a team right there. The guys they've replaced them with, maybe not of the same quality, but should be better than what Dundee have done this year. There was a big surprise last week when Rob Ritchie left the club. That was a bit of a surprise. He's returned to North America to sign for Brampton Beast, I saw on social media. But Paul Swindlehurst came back. Paul was a big player for them last year, a real talent that's come through from the EPL. After his North American odyssey didn't quite go to plan, he's now back in Dundee. So again, that's a big presence back in the defence. But then you look at the results on Saturday and Sunday, as I touched upon, and you wonder, well, how has that happened? Dundee is a real mystery as to why they're not doing so well this year. You can argue maybe they overachieved last year with the players that they had, and Jeff Hutchins knew that team was likely to be broken up, but I don't think he expected the level of where they are right now, and certainly not being bottom of the league at this time.
Do you think Hutchins is under pressure as coach?
I think, and if the run continues, if he isn't already under pressure now, then if results don't improve in maybe say the next month, I think he'll be under real pressure. I think he's got to start delivering. I get the feeling with Jeff. He won't say it publicly. He's continued to back his players, and rightly so. He thinks it will come good. But you know what? If it doesn't come good any time in December, I think he's going to be in a really, really serious situation where questions are going to be really asked of what he's done. Take nothing away from what he has done at Dundee so far. I mean, he just missed out in the playoffs and no more in his first season, 2 seasons back. Did so well with them last year, finishing third in the league, winning the Gardner Conference, but missing out in the playoff quarter-finals, which was probably a couple of games too far for them. This year, they really need to start picking up the points. There's no point getting a win and then losing the next 2. They need to start putting a run together. I just don't know where that's going to come from when you look at the fixtures that are coming.
Yeah, I mean, they've also got quite a tricky game on Saturday night against Hull at Hull Arena, so that's they've got to get through that, and then they've got the NIC on Sunday, so it's not going to be another easy weekend for them. Definitely
not by a long shot. And Hull are another team that have been inconsistent this year, but they have picked up results against certain teams on certain nights that have given them a feel good factor. Dundee just can't seem to get out of the rut that they're in, and it's very difficult to explain. Very difficult, as outsiders looking in, to understand as well. If they get a win against Hull on Saturday, and that's the game on television, then that could stand them in good stead for playing the Panthers at the NIC. If not, I could see another difficult weekend for them.
Before I let you go, obviously Braehead are doing incredibly well in the league at the moment. Do you think they've got a chance of winning the title?
Well, as things currently stand, I think they've got as good a chance as anybody. They've started the season so well. No doubt what happened at the weekend was a setback, the defeat in Fife on Saturday, then losing 4-1 in Sheffield on Sunday. Sheffield come to Glasgow on Friday and Saturday, so that's a big weekend for Braehead. It's their only 2 games this weekend, so they don't have to travel at all. So, if they can get something off the Steelers this weekend, then it could be very much back on track. But it's so tight up there. I mean, you've got Belfast, who are still performing well. They've got you could say the distraction of the Continental Cup this weekend, which takes them out of things. If Braehead get at least one win over Sheffield this weekend, then it could certainly get them back on track. But it's going to go right to the wire. I think it's going to be so unbelievably tight that when we speak again, no doubt, towards the end of the season, we'll still be saying the same thing.
Okay. Well, thanks for joining me, Craig. I really, really do appreciate your time.
All the best. Thanks, Jono.
So Craig Anderson from Slapshot Scotland there. Obviously looking at things from a Fife and Dundee perspective for the weekend. Aaron joins me once again. It is not going to be an easy weekend this weekend, is it, mate?
No, it's really not. Possibly one of the toughest weekends that you could imagine in one way. But we do have to play these teams at some point during the season, and hey, look, people are asking for a performance and results from the Panthers, and what's to say they won't go and get them? But it's certainly going to be a tough weekend, especially the Saturday against Fife. I think that's the one you're looking at and thinking we need a performance there to get something out of that game.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is, a few weeks ago when we was there in our other league game, we did pull off a 2-1 victory when we weren't in the best of form. Obviously, we go up there after a couple of defeats this weekend. What better place to go and get a victory if we can?
Well, it's kind of backs to the wall, isn't it? I mean, it's like that every time you go to Fife anyway, just purely because of the atmosphere that they create up there. But yes, it's 2 defeats, one a shootout loss, and one a 1-goal game, which we were talking about earlier with the coach. So, although they were losses, I mean, it's not like we're kind of in terrible form and we're really at the scraping the barrel kind of thing. But like you just said, it could really help us. And at the moment with the way the Panthers are, you just never know, do you? I suppose you wouldn't be surprised if we lost, but then would it surprise me if we turned up and won? No, it wouldn't. So it's a tough one to call.
I mean, Dundee on Sunday, the way things are with form, you would expect Panthers to get 2 points from that game, especially the way that Dundee are playing at the minute. They're sort of bottom of the league. They've only got 8 points. You would expect Panthers to win that game, but as we found in Edinburgh a couple of weeks ago, you can't take anything for granted in this league.
You really can't, and you are right in one way to say that you really would expect the Panthers to win that, being at home and etc., and both having to travel down and all that. But I'm sure the Cardiff fans would have thought that they really should have won against Dundee. I know they did eventually, but it was touch and go for a lot of the game. Yeah. And it shows you and backs you up in the fact that you really can't predict anything and take anybody for granted, because at some point Dundee they will start to win games and they'll go on a little bit of a run. But let's just hope Sunday isn't a part of that, to be honest, because I think from the Panthers' point of view, we kind of need to get a result. We need to kind of just not stem the tide, but really just get back on the horse, as it would, and get a win, and just try and portray a bit of confidence, because and I know the whole CWTV, which we've talked about in the intro, leads to a bit of just downbeatness within the Panthers nation, if you would. And I think the team it will be back to full strength this weekend, with Perron and Kaywell coming back, so hopefully we'll start to see a bit more of a settled Panthers, and that can only be a positive thing going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So Fife on Saturday, 7:15 face-off at the Fife Arena, and then the Panthers playing Dundee Stars at home at the NIC on Sunday with a 4 p.m. face-off. Aaron, once again, we're at an end, so thank you very much for joining me.
That's an absolute pleasure, mate. No problem.
Thank you very much. As we said in the intro, the CWTV we asked about is the current criticism of the Panthers team warranted? We've been so overwhelmed with the response we've had both on Twitter and on the Cage Forum that it would probably take up another hour of this show, and a 2-hour podcast is probably going a little bit far. So what we're going to do, we're going to collate that together, and we're probably going to do another special podcast just looking at that question a little bit later in the week. So I'm sure you'll be joining me for that, won't you, mate?
Yes, I will be. Yes, I'll cancel my plans and I'll be available for you, buddy.
Nice one. And we'll see if we can get some other people to join us as well. I want to say a big thank you to Neil Coach Russell, Aaron Murphy, and of course Craig Anderson from Slapshot Scotland for joining us this week. Thank you very much for listening, and we will see you soon.